My vote is the same.
Okay, that'll conclude our hearings today. You've been granted after completion of a phase 1 and 2 of that living in ballot. I know, Wires, you got it under control. Thank you.
An armed robbery suspect is dead, killed by Lafayette police. It happened last night. Lafayette Sheriff's deputies were trying to arrest Tony Pollard on warrants for an earlier armed robbery. The Sheriff's office says Pollard wouldn't comply with their commands and moved in a threatening way. So officers opened fire. Pollard died at the scene. State police are now investigating.
So that news incident that we just saw took place on July 4th of 2024. And the parole hearing took place in 2022. Now, he was serving more than 40-year sentence for armed robbery, of which he had served 20 years. We're going to take a blast to the past and watch that parole hearing. It's about 10 minutes long, and then it's really kind of uneventful. It really is. But we'll unpack it with the details at the end. And a special shout out to our very own Louisiana native Sneaker Queen for sending this news article. And of course, Richard for quickly lining up the parole hearing. With that, let's jump in.
All right, we're ready with the zone.
Would the offender please introduce yourself for the
An
record,
armed
stating
robbery
your name and
suspect is
DOC
dead,
number?
killed by Lafayette police. It happened last night. Lafayette Sheriff's deputies were trying to arrest Tony Pollard on warrants for an earlier armed
I'm sorry,
robbery.
can you please
The
repeat
Sheriff's
that?
office says
Tony Pollard, 125548.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Let me explain the process here. First, I will read information into the record, then the board will conduct a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, we will allow the participants who have indicated to speak to add their input. We have 3 who are here in support. We have Ms. Katie Houlihan, daughter, who will be speaking. With her is Mr. Chester Benoit, employer, who will not be speaking. And we have Ms. Sherry Fry, friend, who will be speaking in support. At the end, Mr. Pollard, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand the process, sir? Okay, this is the case for Tony Pollard, DOC number 125548, date of birth, 5th, 1971, classified as a 3rd felony offender. Offenses: simple robbery, possession of Xanax, theft, forgery, simple burglary, armed robbery, 2 counts, convicted felon in possession of a firearm. Sentencing dates are March 16, 1989, revoked April 28, 1994. October 9, 1998, and February 8, 2002. Sentenced to a total of 48 years, 1 month, 16 days. Parole date, January 17, 2022. Good time, August 5th, 2044. Full term, July 22nd, 2049. Is this information correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Wise.
Mr. Pollard, as I go over this, I'm going to make it short and sweet. Now, you're a 3rd class offender. You have an adjustment date of 44. And I see down there where it says credits, you hadn't received any credits. Now, tell me why you hadn't done any programs, or Warden, you make it explain to me about the program. He's got a 48-year sentence. And how long have you been incarcerated, Mr. Pollard?
20 years, sir.
You're going to get up closer to the mic, or they're going to have to turn the mic up there, because sometimes it just fades out. We can't hear it.
So I've been down 20 years and about 3 weeks.
Okay, you've been down 20 years. What about your programs? Why ain't you completed some programs?
I got 10 programs, sir.
Well, I was looking at your credits on your master prison record, and then I've looked at your programs here that you have on your activity report, your B1 file here, and you have self-esteem, sir, living in balance. A lot of these programs are older programs there, but was drugs one of the reasons for all these burglaries and everything?
No, sir. Not for this last charge it was.
Well, I ain't talking about all along. Some of these charges, all this amounts to this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What caused the last charge?
Last charge, I was financially really in a bind, and I had to take care of my family, and I had no other way but to take the wrong choice that I did, sir.
Okay, as I look over here, I look on your file. I've seen you. Have you ever sent us completed living in balance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, Warden, as I look on his file, the last file was a 30E, and he had some more of those. Can you kind of go over that real quick with me? What that 30E was for?
Yeah, let me find it real quick, Mr. Wise. Look, I want to tell you that
Well,
he's not eligible for good time. That's why he hasn't received any good time for these classes and these things that he's done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I seen where he had them on his B1 record there, where he's got them. He's done some pretty good programs there. But anyway, I don't have any other questions at this time. Miss Bonnie Jackson's got a question.
Yes, I saw that you had applied for the Blue Walters program back on December 15th of 21. Have you heard anything more about whether or not you can get into Blue Walters, Mr. Pollard?
Again, I heard nothing else from them. They had sent me no paper, telling me that I could or couldn't.
Warden, what would it take to get him into a long-term substance abuse program?
We can get that done.
Yeah, we can get that done. We can get him into Steve Hall or something.
Okay. All right, well, that's all I have.
Okay, at this time, I see a speaker today, Miss Sherry Fry. If you would, Miss Sherry, unmute your mic and go ahead and give us your statement.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for Tony. I've known Tony since he was a teenager. My husband and I have been the primary ones to make sure that he kept in contact with his children throughout his incarceration. And I can tell you that with the guidance that he's tried to give his children, he's learned through his mistakes and his bad choices, or he wouldn't be able to give them the good advice that he's been able to give them. And I also want you to know that I've worked both in the 15th and 16th JDC, both in drug court and in family services, and I will be available to assist him in finding the resources and the direction for him to make a successful transition from prison to community.
Yes, ma'am. And that's great. I see there's another speaker there, Miss Katie, daughter. Unmute your mic.
Your Honor, that's me.
Okay, go ahead.
I just can't believe this day has actually come. It's been a really, really tough road for us. Like my grandmother was speaking, saying, my dad has given us the most upright advice, as in making the right decisions and learning from his, which I thankfully have done. And I just want him home, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I want to say this, Warden Myers, if something happened, the vote was to go where he had to do conditionally to do Steve Hall. I don't know if they're taking anybody at Steve Hall with all this pandemic going on right now. You know what I mean?
Not right now.
That's what I'm afraid of. But what programs he can complete there before he gets out?
Well, let's see, where's it? Completed living in balance, but that was quite some time ago, I believe. We can put him back in that and get him some more help with that as a condition. We can get him enrolled.
What,
All right,
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask, what is his drugs of choice?
It's cocaine, sir.
Cocaine, okay. Because they've got the STARS questionnaire there for you, but it's not, cocaine is your issue, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
at this time, I'm gonna be voting. I'm gonna vote to grant. I'm gonna vote to grant that he conditionally that he goes to the living in balance 1 and 2 class before being released. He's set up as a low risk. He's got some good programs along the way and good family support. Thank you, Mr. Marabella.
My vote would be the same, Mr. Chairman, grant conditionally, contingent upon him completing the living in balance program.
Ms. Jackson.
My vote is the same.
Okay, that'll conclude our hearings today. You've been granted after completion of a phase 1 and 2 of that living in balance. I know Ward Myers, you got it under control. Thank you.
Get it.
Okay, let's unpack this. To start, it's tragic when someone's life is lost. We saw their family. We see that he has loved ones, and in my opinion, it was again that that drug that I'm guessing, we don't know, this is speculation, but that he went back to it and then it took over and he had to rob to get it. Again, just speculation. And ultimately that is tragic, although we should be thankful that police or other innocent people weren't physically harmed. Of course, now there's a police officer that had to take a life and deal with the repercussions of that. Now, there is some controversy around this case, which the news reporter brings up, and we can go over it. In a nutshell, he was arrested twice before this action. So the question is, why was he not revoked? He never had a parole
An
revocation
armed
hearing.
robbery suspect
Now,
is dead,
the
killed by Lafayette
news anchor
police.
or
It
the
happened last
investigator, I
night.
should say,
Lafayette Sheriff's deputies were
contacted
trying to arrest Tony Pollard on warrants for an earlier
and
armed robbery.
the Justice
Sheriff's office
Department
said
and the Justice Department promised to get back a week later. It's been a week later. We still haven't heard anything back, at least from the news department. I can tell you, after I consulted with Richard, and also I'll have the way the law is written out about revocations as to why and what probably happened in this case, why he wasn't revoked. We'll go over that. Now, I think he should have gotten paroled. He served 20 years. What was he serving 20 years for? Well, we're not going to go over it in detail because there's just not, but I'll put the link in the description. And again, thank you, Richard. But in a nutshell, he was a getaway driver in an armed robbery. He had other armed robberies in his past. He was a convicted felon. They found the weapon in his room, but then they gave him more than a 40-year sentence. That's a long time. He served 20 years on it. If you're going to parole anyone, it's like, I think it was probably him. Now, there were some things that they didn't, I don't know if the warden was covering for him because his kids were there watching, or if there's, I'm just speculating again, but that one write-up that they did ask about, I don't know if it rings a bell, the 30E, it's actually a write-up that I don't think we've ever seen before, and it is telling, and they didn't say the date of that write-up. It might have happened in year 1, year 2, or year 3, and then he went 17 years without getting any of these write-ups. But 30E is the following behaviors which may impair, threaten security or stability of unit or well-being. Now, E is engaging in or making an attempt to engage in not professional. Wait a minute. What? Sorry, that's D. I was like, what? E, trafficking in narcotics or alcohol, stolen goods, or sexual favors. So I'm guessing that he was, actually you don't really know, but I'm getting, what it was, but it's not a good write-up. But I think it was okay for the warden to skirt over that, whatever. Now here's what let's go look at the crime scene for a second.
right here in the 400 block of Wagon Trail Road in Karen Crow. Sheriff's deputies say they went to arrest Tony Pollard for armed robbery and other gun crimes, and they say Pollard threatened them, which resulted in deputies opening fire and killing him. No one else was injured in this incident, and state police have been brought in to investigate this deadly shooting.
In Paris this morning, an investigation underway after deputies shot and killed Tony Pollard while attempting to serve an arrest warrant for armed robbery. Now, the shooting happened on Wagon Trail Wednesday evening in Karen Crow, where police say Pollard was wanted for multiple violent crimes. Allegedly, he ignored commands and then approached deputies in a threatening manner, which ultimately prompted them to take action. No deputies were injured, but Louisiana State Police encourage anyone with information to come forward.
Okay, and so now I'll just read it to you. We'll go over like what it was that he was. So troopers still investigating to ask. This is not the one I wanted to read to you. All right. So a man is dead after an officer-involved shooting in Lafayette Parish Wednesday night. Why is... So, okay, deputies were attempting to arrest Tony Pollard for violent crimes, including an armed robbery on 4th of July. The victim of the robbery spoke with News 10 about the break-in days after it happened. He's now speaking out about the suspect's death and his concerns regarding the investigation. The victim, who chose to stay anonymous, detailed at the News 10 waking up from a nap to sounds in his... I'm not going to pronounce that right. Louisiana natives tell me Karen Crow home. At first he thought that it was his grandmother. Instead it was a stranger, and the intruder pointed a gun at his head. Well, okay, that's that's never mind. This is more than just, that's trauma right there you're creating. Having a gun pointed at your head. He stole his truck and 2 of his guns. A week later, the suspect is dead. Since then, they found the suspect tried to serve a warrant, and guess it didn't end up going how they wanted it, and so someone ended up getting killed, the robbery victim said. He said the suspect, Tony, broke into his home on the night of July 4th. He said he wrestled Pollard to the ground, but then Pollard pulled a gun on him. He added Pollard's for 2 pistols and took off with his truck. Imagine that, opening your door and then fighting for your life. He heard Pollard was killed Wednesday night when deputies of Lafayette's Parish Sheriff's Office attempted to arrest him. Why are they redundant in this writing? Local writing has gotten so bad, or maybe it's always been bad. I don't know. I get them. I still get a newspaper mailed to me, and I have a hard time reading it. The writing is so poor. He heard Pollard was killed Wednesday night. Okay. LPSO said Pollard was under investigation for a series of violent crimes over the last several days, including the armed robbery on the 4th of July. LPSO said Pollard refused to comply with deputies demanding and moved in a threatening manner, resulting in deputies responding with deadly force. I was happy. It didn't hurt my feelings, made my day knowing that he wasn't around anymore to do that to anyone else, the robbery victim told News 10. However, the man whose story sparked the investigation to Pollard had questions. What I want to know is, how does someone cut an ankle monitor off and they're on house arrest and run around all weekend without anyone being notified that he cut it off, the victim said. He said deputies investigated the robbery. They shared information that concerned him. They claim he was on house arrest and he cut the ankle monitor off that night, that he held me at gunpoint. So, like I said, how does an individual do this? Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, of course, anyone can cut an ankle monitor off and go rob someone or do worse. But if it's all weekend, that's, I guess it's July 4th weekend. Parole officers are on vacation. They don't really want to deal with it. I don't know. As for the items he said he stole, he listed on Facebook Marketplace. Wow, that's smart. I guess man, if you think you have stolen goods, don't list it on Facebook Marketplace. My truck was recovered because the car that bought it tried to register it at the DMV. Wow. And they put a flag out on the truck and caught him. I have my truck back. But my guns, I don't know. I'll probably never get them back, he said. So they also said there's an article about his arrests, and he had two kind of like minor arrests that were pled down, and they said how come he wasn't revoked. So in a nutshell, basically like the parole officer can make the decision whether or not to revoke him. That's and the parole officer deemed it not necessary. He could have been revoked for any criminal activity. We've seen that happen a million times. There's also this thing. This is in the law. So there are automatic like punishments. So if you're arrested on parole for technical violation, the offender shall not serve more than 90 days. For a second violation, they should not serve more than 120 days. And for a third violation, they should not serve more than 180 days. Now, how they define violation is not the same thing as like committing another crime. Now, and ultimately it's up to the parole officer whether or not to revoke him. That's the understanding. It just seems that the parole officer didn't deem it worthy of revoking, and they never did officially revoke his parole, and that's why he never came up for a parole revocation hearing. And you probably would have said that was a mistake. He clearly didn't want. He knew he'd be going back and spending pretty much the rest of his life in prison. He didn't want to. And the lawnmower is telling me that it's time to let you go. But thank you again, Richard, and thank you, Sneaker Queen.
All right, good morning.